GM fam, welcome. A few of you already here for the live chat. Nice to see. Let's queue up some questions in the comments while we wait for see if people trickle in. Nice to have all of you joining here. Today we're looking over the convex bribes. Of course, the overall volume on convex bribes reflects the new DeFi pricing, but otherwise it kind of feels like not much has changed, right? Yeah. Graph looks basically the same if you look at Llama Air Force. Well, when we compared the math directly for paid subscribers today, the most recent round versus the last round that Terra was bribing, wow, what a difference. Since then, 40% of the pools have dropped, 24% of the pools are new, so it's basically like the entire bribing ecosystem on Convex is completely flipped upside down in just a few months. Now, of course, it's still Frax dominant, and now even more so than ever. About 2/3 of the bribe income hit a Frax pool this most recent round. Welcome, layman's terms, says GM. Edon, yes, we doing this, friends. So feel free to drop some questions in the comments. We'll get to them in just a second. We're talking about convex bribes. Among the losses from a few weeks ago, Steth is a notable drop. It seems as if Lido has given up on trying to keep their Steth pegged. Of course, Steth is figuring a massive degree in the Celsius drama. I'm not following the Celsius drama too closely, but pretty wild stuff. If you're interested in speculating on the merge but don't want to run a node, you might be looking at the Steth discount and being a little bit excited. So some of the new bribers that we've seen in the most recent convex round. Spell is reinforcing the MIMPEG. JPEG to reinforce PUSD. And we're even seeing some Euro bribes, possibly Lagarde? No idea. Finally, in convex news, as Shisha is pointing out in the comments, there's going to be a pretty massive sell coming up. It appears that Wonderland is going to be dumping their convex stash. I guess they have to make a bit more room for Sifu Vision. Now, they held a whopping 1.1 million convex, which is a substantial supply. Convex only has 100 million tokens, so of course that's 1.1% of the entire total convex supply. There's also some rumors floating around that there's a big short open by Wonderland for convex, so we'll see if that's something that's actually, I don't know where to look that up, but might be some funky stuff going on there. It sounds like they're looking for an OTC buyer, but if they end up dumping this on exchanges, that could be a pretty sudden hit. We ran that into the Curve Convex ETH pool, and dumping 1.1 million tokens there, they have enough liquidity, but it's going to cause a 25% price impact. So pretty much worth watching. So that's the news that I've picked up from around Convex, but been interesting to hear from all of you. Got possibly a new record, 13 live viewers here, which is kind of exciting. So dump all your questions in the comments. It's kind of question and answer time. I'll see what I can do. Also note that if you didn't pay attention to yesterday's stream, if you're interested in the concentrator, their event just went live, and rumor has it that it's some pretty juicy APYs for the first people in the pool. Now, APY is like a terrible way to mention to judge all these new things, but I'm planning on perhaps after I finish up with all of you, strolling over and seeing if I can jump into that pretty fun opportunity over at Concentrator. Layman's terms, Chapter 13, Sifu Vision, but Chapter 11, sorry. Well, you know, Celsius is so wrecked, they might be filing for pretty much every chapter in the book. Iman, GM, hope you're doing well. Shisha, what I fear is another squeeze on shorts. Convex will hit $10. Yeah, it's pretty wild. With all these tokens, like we're kind of seeing it where there's like such a thin amount of liquidity for a lot of these DeFi tokens. And like, of course, macro is like absolutely horrible. I don't pay a ton of attention to TradFi, but I hear a bit here and there every time there's like these big events. And oh boy, TradFi is just awful right now. And there's nothing we can pretty much do. Like when there's no money anywhere, like of course we're going to be at the bottom end of these things. But what's crazy is there's such a small amount of liquidity on all these exchanges that if all it's going to take is macro to turn bullish. And I think we're going to see some pretty sudden price impact. It's probably not going to get back to the way it was before all this dumping started to happen, but I think we can see pretty quickly some of these tokens that are trading at their absolute rock bottom are going to turn around. I think that all the contagion's mostly out of the system. So Shisha predicts Convex will hit $10. Of course, we don't do price advice here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a big uptick in Convex. Edon Stern, how much is usually paid for each VL CVX these days? So my go-to source on this is always the Llama Air Force. They do a really good job of tallying this. So that's just llama.airforce. It's currently around 8 cents per VL CVX. And this is, in fact, a little bit of an uptick. Recent rounds, it had been down like 6 cents. So maybe it's trending finally upwards in the right direction. But of course, before things crashed, we were kind of settling in around 5x that, like 45 to 40 cents. So yeah, VLCVX is kind of looking bad. But the thing that I'm focused on most of that is like not so much like the actual dollars per VLCVX, because I think that's going to ebb and flow with the market, but I'm kind of looking at how concentrated it is. And right now it's like 65% money coming from Frax to Frax pools. I'd like to see that a bit more diversified, because it's actually a pretty good opportunity for people who want to get involved in the bribing ecosystem. Also, according to Llama Air Force, that's $1.53 in emissions per dollar spent on bribes. So that's essentially free money. That's pretty good, although it's actually not as good as Aura. Aura, according to the same Llama Air Force, is at $4.50, so even better free money. Layman's terms, SDT rabbit hole is becoming more and more interesting. You have to see what they are doing with the bribes. Yeah, StakeDAO's on top of things. I talked a lot about StakeDAO in yesterday's live stream, so go ahead and check that out. But I'm sort of a fan of what they're doing, and I think I usually like to make my moves on weekends, but I have a feeling I have like a small amount of Convex lying on stake, Curve lying on staked. I think I'm going to try tossing it in StakeDAO, just see what happens. What's the gateway to this rabbit hole? Niharika Singh asks, where to begin understanding the Curve wars? It's a good question. There's a lot of good threads on Twitter covering kind of Curve basics. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, because that's one of the things we can try and do with these live streams is discuss the entire Curve wars. Tetranode, before disappearing, he's now back, but had a very good thread where he was trying to explain DeFi in very simple terms. And he described the Curve wars as basically like bidding on the right to receive a unlimited stream of money. How much are you going to bid for something like that? So I think that the Curve wars are pretty complex, a lot of different ins and outs to it. So I think I probably need a bit more of a specific question. But basically, Curve makes a lot of money with its trading fees. It's a very efficient way to trade. It's formerly just stablecoin to stablecoin. They take a small piece of that. But more recently, there are also some V2 pools. So all the trading fees go to people who stake Curve. And people want this Curve for the trading fees in part, but also because you can use Curve for governance to vote on which of these pools gets more rewards. There's a lot of reasons that people need to have liquidity pools. And we've seen a few of them with some of the different pools that are finding it worthwhile to kind of submit these massive bribes. But the Curve wars refers to either who can gather enough Curve to stake it and thus be able to bribe and incentivize their pools, or because a lot of the Curve is already spoken for by Convex, you can borrow Convex's stash by paying them directly. So the gateway of the rabbit hole, though, I think this channel might be a pretty good place to start. Not too much to do too much in the way of self-promotion, but we try and cover, we started this about a year and a half ago just because we didn't understand Curve. It's super complicated. We wanted to kind of chronicle our learning in public, and we're still learning because there's so much going on. Edon Stern, can I talk about the synergy between Curve and Link? So there's kind of the most obvious synergy would simply be the fact that there is just one Chainlink pool between Link and S-Link, although it's not super popular. But that being said, even though there's not a ton of direct overlap between Curve and Link, I feel like there's still some spiritual connections. The community manager for Link is the legendary Chainlink god, and he's been he's been around talking about Link in a lot of depth for some time. And he's also like kind of come out of the closet as like a big Curve supporter, just a really big fan of all the stuff going on within the Curve ecosystem. And Link, of course, is moving to some of their staking of Link. And some of that seems like it might be a bit inspired by Curve. So I don't know if there's any direct kind of protocol to protocol overlap. Some people had actually tried to use Curve v2 pools as a way of replacing Link, which wasn't a really good idea. Curve v2 pools maintain an internal price oracle. So in theory, you could use Curve v2's price oracle instead of Chainlink. But Chainlink does a much better job of it because Curve v2 pools can, especially for lower liquidity ones, the price oracle can be manipulated. So it's not necessarily a good idea. Amon says, all these locked tokens end up with high price volatility, which will make borrowing against most assets not safe. Yes, I can't recommend borrowing. I've just seen too many people get liquidated. It doesn't seem to end well. I think that, you saw like the trials perhaps Elon Musk was going through when he was trying to buy Twitter. He was going to basically he was basically going to lend out his Tesla shares to do so, and then Tesla collapsed, and he kind of now it's a matter for the courts to decide. There is incredibly high price volatility in crypto. I could basically see it being useful. I discussed what if I tried to buy a house by lending a lot of tokens, and I dump all the I lend out a bunch of tokens I don't care about, and if the price goes down, so what? I'm still sitting in a house, so I'm in pretty good shape. But I don't recommend lending unless you're really advanced lender. It's just not worth the stress. Shisha, what do I know about Abracadabra accumulating curve? So a few, it's probably a month or two ago at this point, that Abracadabra is one of the first new protocols to get the capability of a curve whitelist, which means that they can programmatically lock curve. They're planning on using magic curve to do so. I haven't heard too much since then. I was actually looking for some news on that just recently. And when I went to the Abracadabra blog, it got shut down. I don't know why. So if anyone knows what's going on over in Abracadabra world, I started reading through the forum. Don't know a ton. So something's happening with Abracadabra. I don't believe they've started with Magic Curve yet, but by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm small brain. Thoughts on staking VECRV versus CVX as of now? It seems like VECRV can give more per vote than for bribers right now. Yes, if you're willing to stay on top of the bribe game, you could probably do a little bit better with VECRV. That being said, I'm lazy, and gases and Ethereum are both cheap right now, but I can foresee the day when they're both expensive again. And I just kind of like the extra optionality of CVX CRV. That's more of a matter of personal preference, but it's it might theoretically be possible to get more out of more bribes out of VECRV, but then you have to actively go to all the different platforms. It's kind of like a full-time job. So if you're willing to play that game, by all means look at VECRV. I'm lazy, so I kind of moved over to CVX CRV. I just dump in the Air Force Llama Air Force Union, and they do a great job. Shisha, you can check the Taiki with OX Chaos video explaining the whole thing on Curve Wars. I will have to do that. I'll add that to my listening list. I am so bad at watching videos, but I am fine at podcast type stuff. So a ton of fantastic content. Kind of ties in the earlier question about how to get involved in and understand the Curve Wars. Is just look for some of the podcasts, because a lot of great stuff explaining all that. Layman's terms, is there a place to claim bribes for VECRV? I've locked on the Curve site rather than the gauge vote in the site. So that's the issue with the VECRV, is there's so many bribe destinations for it that it can be a bit tough to keep track, because anyone can just create a new site. It used to be that Andre Cronje's Curve bribes was kind of the de facto one, but then after he went Fed, million different bribe sites emerged, and there's no no authoritative one. And I'm not super bullish. People have asked if someone's going to build a bribe aggregator. I'm not bullish on that, because someone's just going to come up with a brand new format and dump that, and yeah, it's trouble. Is the best place to buy Curve and Convex the Curve exchange? So I know that I might be wrong about this, but I think that the convex ETH pool on Curve is now the biggest source of convex available, which is pretty wild. I don't know if this is necessarily the case for Curve, but if you don't need to do limit orders, then if you're just doing market buys, like I think that the doing it on chain is kind of nice right now, just because it's like a little bit easier for me at least. And because like gas and everything is so cheap right now, you can do a lot of stuff on chain. I also have like a Coinbase account. Like Coinbase is pretty good. I'm not an active trader though, so I don't really like seek out, like maybe FTX is pretty good for those things. I know that like just DeFi being what it is, there's probably a ton of traders in the comments. So be curious to hear where all of you are making your exchanges. Again, not financial advice, blah, blah, blah. Alex C, thoughts on CVX? The compounder on Llama looks very attractive if looking for capital gains rather than income. Interesting. Yeah, the capital gains is a whole different like aspect. And one of the reasons I just don't trade a lot, just because every trade you make, you have to like then at the end of the year like report taxes on it. It's such a hassle. And you can do a lot of stuff, especially now with all the prices being so low. You can do some tax loss harvesting, but if you just don't trade that much to begin with, then your taxes become a lot easier. Thoughts on CVX? Very big fan. I don't know if everyone saw this, but Pyrex recently lowered their fees. So they were, I think, at 10%. They dropped it to 7%. And they claim this makes them the lowest fee. I'm still having a bit of trouble kind of understanding like an apples to apples comparison of the fees, because they apply to different events, it seems like, between Pyrex and Clever and Badger. But one of the things that is interesting about CVX is they give you 3 options. They call it easy, medium, and hard mode. So lots of interesting stuff going on with Pyrex. I expect next week article comparing all the 3, like as close to apples as we can get. Layman's Terms asks about borrowing against USDC. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. No, I say that because I don't particularly like care about USDC. I care about tokens. So if I get liquidated USDC, like yes, USDC has been strong the last few months, but generally speaking, USDC is a sinking ship, and I want off that train. So yeah, as long as you're selling asset or lending assets you don't care about, then I think borrowing makes sense. It's just there's so many like scam wicks that these things get like dumped all the time. One thing I was curious about is if there's good places to short stable coins, because it actually seems like short selling stable coin, I don't see the downside, because like the one thing is like a stable coin is not going to like run up in value, but it will in some cases like run down in value. So if you could like short a USD in, then 99% of the time it's probably just sitting there. But if that short position is open, you can maybe cash it out. I don't know. I don't. That was just a thought experiment. I'm not a good trader, as you can tell. DeFi Advisor, hello. Have I looked at vendor finance? Only a little bit, but I know that they have some heavy hitters joining the team. So I'm a big fan of like Yeti WAP, I think, is part of the team. I believe Alejino of Kingmaker podcast is connected with the team. So I just with people like that behind the team, I think that they are kind of amazing. I don't know. Have they launched anything yet? If they haven't launched yet, then there might not be much to look at. But if they are launching soon, or if they have launched, it would be worth an article to talk about what they're doing, or maybe even interviewing some of them. I'd be interested in hearing a bit more about vendor finance directly from the horse's mouth. Layman's terms, where's the issue in that over collateralized loans? Poor people like me do not have the means, but the rich would rather that than deal with a bank. Yeah. It's so wild that so first off, I don't know if anyone's had the experience of trying to get a loan from a bank when your net worth is mostly in crypto, because it's not happening. They hang up the phone rather rudely on you when you talk about that. But lending on chain is awesome, but I still think that someone needs to solve this problem, and I don't know how it can be solved, but someone's going to figure it out at some point, because we need to see under collateralized loans. Otherwise, poor people aren't going to have like any particular utility. Like, I kind of get now, like the more I like spend time I spend with it, like why over collateralized loans make some sense. I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not really sure. Like, the question I always have, and I'd like to hear people's experience on this. Like, in theory, if you're lending on chain, or sorry, just lending generally that's not like a taxable event unless you default. But has anyone actually tried it? Has anyone tried to take that of tried to take like $2 million, lend it for $1 million, go to the bank and say, hey, like I have $1 million right here. I just dumped in my account last night, and there's no tax consequence. So don't even come after me, tax man. Because I imagine that the tax man like would take them to court. So I'm just curious to know if anyone's tried that. Amadeo Brands, you made it. Welcome. Did I have time to get into the IFO? I will look into that after I get off the call. So the longer you keep me on the call, the longer you get to keep the gains for yourself. I do plan. I usually wait till weekends to do my aping. I don't know why, but just like there's no news going on and gas is usually cheap. But I'm gonna have to run that today. Some people are commenting on my thoughts on borrowing and stable, or like lending out and shorting stables. Amon says I can borrow it and then buy it back from a lending platform for stable shorting. Yeah, it's a good idea. Layman's terms, ask game theorizing about shorting stables. So yeah, interesting ideas. Like, I have all these ideas, but then I'm boring. Like, I'm the most boring crypto person because I literally just buy and hold. And I try and do like a lot of yield farming on it. Under collateralized loans will be possible on Vendor from what I've seen. Now that is really cool. So of course you get geniuses like them on the team, and they're going to do some stuff. If I dropped 1 million in a bank account, ... I guess the Feds got you, layman's terms, before you could finish the thought. Kind of you to type an ellipsis at the end before getting got. Yeah, Amon says they wouldn't let you put $1 million into a bank account. Too much money. Real hard part is getting 1 million USDC into fiat USD. Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious to hear people's experiences with this, because like I think the killer use case for crypto, or not the killer use case, but the killer product that is yet to be built is there's like all these crypto millionaires and better that can't buy a house. It's just like the craziest thing. Like, someone can solve this where like if you figure out how to get all these like incredibly wealthy people from crypto to own a house, like I think that like that's kind of a killer app. There's gonna be so much demand for it. Because I know, I mean, like obviously like markets have crashed and like a lot of former millionaires are now working at McDonald's, but like 6 months ago at all-time highs, like you could have easily got some, like a ton of customers who have millions of dollars in crypto assets and wouldn't mind like lending it out to try and get a house. But the issue of moving $1 million from on-chain into a bank account without raising a million red flags and having the money seized, like it just can't happen. That I know of. I would be really curious to hear if anyone has tried it. I know at least I know that Ratwell, the artist from Tubby Cats, was able to buy a house off of the money that he or she made from Tubby Cats. I don't know how they did that, so I'd be kind of curious. I tried to interview, but the interview request fell through, because I know at least if one other NFT artist was trying and failed. I think the way you'd have to do it would be like, and again, certainly not financial advice here. I think you'd have to take like small transactions, like 5,000 at a time, and just do that. And that's going to take like a year, and then you're giving up on a year worth of yield for $1 million. I mean, you could make pretty good amount yield farming that. So, DeFi Jangle, thanks for the retweet this morning. Finally caught this live. Always a pleasure. I mean, like, I'm like the laziest person in all of crypto, because I just retweet other people's work, and then I take all of the retweets that look good and send them out in a news article and call it a Substack, and it makes it really good because I don't need to fact check anything. I don't need to research anything. I just borrow everyone else's research, so life is good. DeFi Jangle, you caught it live, but you caught it just as all the questions tapered off. We already answered absolutely everything. Amadeo Brands on DeFi with the on-chain lending DE. Ooh, Fed's got you too, I think. With the on-chain lending discussion. Okay, you're back. Sounds good. I'll catch the full recording. Yeah, it's everyone has been saying that if we just keep doing these, we'll start to get more traction. So pretty good stuff. We hit like 20 concurrent viewers at a time. So if we keep this up, maybe we'll be able to like hit that YouTube trending list, and we'll just get a bunch of random people who know nothing about Curve. One of the things that's wild to me about like Curve is like some people don't even know that you can earn like Curve by like locking it up. Because I literally had someone ask me that when I was at the event in Austin. They're like, what can you do? Can you do anything with Curve? And I was like, oh, buddy. Could be done peer-to-peer. That's interesting. Yeah. A lot of peer-to-peer stuff. And the peer-to-peer like is the like holy grail in all this. And the reason that like I think regulations are going to end up being pretty friendly because they know that even if they try and like ban crypto, it just ends up going peer-to-peer in the end anyway. Layman's terms, yeah, looking at concentrator and JPEG. Is there new stuff going on with JPEG? I haven't heard much about JPEG. I assumed that they were having like some trouble in the bear market, but I saw that they were looking to add some new NFT collections. So I think JPEG is going to be doing some interesting stuff. Absolutely, I've blown more minds with what Curve is than anything else. Best kept secret in crypto only. I don't even know if it's a secret or not. I mean, it's obviously like our small little community. There's like 5 total people in crypto on the internet. Then we just have a bunch of alt accounts, but like the people who know about Curve are like go wild about it. Vendor is peer-to-peer. Ah, interesting. I think someone's gonna like. I have this like wild idea that someone's gonna figure out how to create successfully an on-chain reputation token, and use like the reputation token to solve this under collateralized lending piece, which is like if you have you have to like work to build up the reputation token, and you can then lend that for multiples. And if you burn your reputation, just like in real life, you got to start from square one. But I've tried to figure out the mechanics for it, and I'm not a tokenomics buff. I'm small brain, so. DeFi degen score. Yeah, the problem you run into is like people like Sifu aren't going to care about burning their reputation score. So, big deal. He can't get access to a loan, but he gets 25 million from Wonderland Treasury. Isn't that wild that Wonderland is dumping its convex, and it's just made a $25 million purchase of Sifu Vision? The space. Sometimes I hate this space. All right. Looks like everyone is time is nuts. Yeah. I'm so glad I never touched that one. Never touched UST. Markets pumping. Is that the TardFi markets or just crypto markets? Let's take a quick look. Which one of you is responsible for Curve run up yesterday? Curve up like, oh boy, Curve's up to 110. Got to get it back up to 6 or so, but oh yeah, Bitcoin's up 20.5, Ethereum 1.1. Kind of a bummer. I'm hoping Ethereum drops again because I still want to get some crypto only. That's okay. That's what I like to see. Well, I'm still really hoping for like another dump. I'd like to get another like Ethereum tank. Load up on some of that. I will see 3-figure ETH again. It's 3-figure ETH again. Thank you, layman's terms. That's what I'm looking for. Curved 0.002 ETH. Yeah. I think there's I think there's an argument for curve running up relative to ETH. As I've said before on these live streams, like the to me the bull case for curve, like certainly there's the curve USD, which is going to, if that hits, that could change some things up. But I personally would like to see V2 pools really start to flip in Uniswap. I think that's the like real bull case for curve versus ETH. Also some of the cross-chain stuff. I'd like to buy some 50-cent curves. Price needs to go down a little bit. Let's talk NFTs this weekend. Even do a weekend Renegade live. Whew. I definitely want to talk NFTs. This weekend, I am doing another hike, so I'm not going to be around for most of the weekend. Maybe some on Sunday, but like weekends don't really matter to me. Like I left my own devices. Like all days are just days, so I don't really care about Mondays versus Sundays, Saturdays. But I have people in my orbit, and other human beings kind of get depressed when you don't do stuff on weekends. So if you got people in your orbit, you kind of have to take weekends sometimes. Alrighty. So, well, you all know how to find me. Let's definitely get some NFT chatter going on, because it would be kind of fun to chat more about NFTs, because I know very little, but big fan of NFTs. Make sure everyone check out that concentrator initial farm offering. Make sure to enjoy markets pumping if you're one of the people that likes tokens going up in price. And generally speaking, thanks for all the questions, and thank you all for making these live streams a success, because this really is your show. NFTs are the future. Yes, indeed. Take care, everybody.